Hi, Victoria.
I'm very excited for today's conversation. And I know I say that every time.
Right.
But this is like the conversation.
It is like bringing it all together into one concise package. Everything you need to know about plasmalogens and a whole lot of things that you probably didn't think you needed to know.
Yeah.
But you do.
Well, even, I've been working with you or, with plasmalogens and for years. And as we were talking about the content for this podcast, we even had new breakthroughs. So I feel like we're going to summarize everything we've talked about over the past year. And we're also going to put this in context to really show why do these things matter.
Correct.
And so in that light, I want to start with the kind of working definition or fact sheet for plasmalogens that summarize why they're so important. And then we'll go from there. But just for some context, so plasmalogens are a unique class of phospholipids that are essential for maintaining cellular structure and function. They play a crucial role in protecting cell membranes from oxidative damage due to their high antioxidant capacity. They are particularly abundant in the brain, heart, and immune cells, where they contribute to cellular signaling, membrane fluidity, and the regulation of lipid metabolism. In addition to their structural role, plasmalogens are involved in key physiological processes such as neurotransmission, immune modulation, and mitochondrial function. In the brain, plasmalogens are found in high concentrations in neurons and glial cells, where they support cognitive function, neuroprotection, and synaptic communication. They are also essential for maintaining cardiovascular health as they help regulate cholesterol metabolism and reduce inflammation. Humans have the ability to synthesize plasmalogens endogenously, primarily in the peroxisomes of the liver, but production declines with age and certain health conditions. As a result, dietary intake and supplementation of plasmalogen precursors become increasingly important for maintaining optimal levels, particularly in aging populations and individuals with neurodegenerative diseases. AKA, they do everything, and they're everywhere.
I know it's like once you see them, you can't unsee them.
Well, that's kind of, we've been talking about them for years, and I tried to put together, the kind of abstracty scientific definition, and I'm like, cellular signaling, membrane fluidity, lipid metabolism, cholesterol, reducing inflammation. They're in your brain, they're in your heart, they're in your lungs. Like, why aren't everyone just shouting these from the rooftops? Well, I know you are.
I know. Well, there's such a critical molecule that the body has a lot of mechanisms to make plasmalogen. So plasmalogen deficiencies go undetected because they are so important. The body doesn't rely on regular dietary intake for it. Mm-hmm. And so therefore, the deficiencies and the distraction from your optimal health shows up later in diseases of aging, for example, as you age, or if you've been suffering from additional stress in your life, cancer, autoimmune diseases, early childhood development stresses. So it's only under those circumstances that this plasmalogen deficiency arises because the body can't make enough. So it has gone undetected for so many years because it is not discoverable by the classic mechanisms by which a vitamin or an essential nutrient would normally be discovered. Mm-hmm. Like normally those are discovered through malnutrition. Someone doesn't actually physically eat enough of a certain type of food in their diet, and they end up with symptoms. And that's how you discover vitamin C and scurvy, vitamin D and rickets, and so on and so forth. These things were all discovered through malnourishment type situations. Mm-hmm. Plasmalogens don't show up until other circumstances arise. So it has evaded the normal discovery mechanism that would normally occur. And the challenge is the fact that they're so important to the human body, and the body basically says, hey, I'm not going to trust you to eat plasmalogens. I'm just going to make sure I make enough of them. Mm-hmm. That has created its own problem because if you can't make enough plasmalogens, there's virtually no dietary source of them. So you're basically screwed because you can't really make them.
Yeah. And so when I said humans have the ability to synthesize plasmalogens endogenously, that means your body is making its own plasmalogen.
Right.
And that's why, unlike a vitamin,
right,
which you can get. So vitamin is not something your body makes itself, right? That's what it needs to get from food.
Correct. So, for example, vitamin C, ascorbic acid,
Mm-hmm.
vitamin B1, like thiamines or riboflavins or your niacin molecules,
Mm-hmm.
your body physically cannot make those molecules. You must get some of them in your diet, okay? Which is normally not a problem because humans need to eat, right? So we can't survive without eating anyway. So we have to eat food. And most of these nutrients come through our animal-based food products, or fruits and vegetables will have certain base levels of these molecules. And for most of human history, we've been focused not on longevity. We've been focused on not dying early. Survival, right? And so the definition of a nutrient deficiency or a vitamin deficiency is really quite severe. Like it's a very severe deficiency that leads to dramatic negative health outcomes, right? And, take vitamin D, for example. Most people, like the minimal amount of vitamin D not to get rickets is not what you'd recommend in your daily diet. Like you need optimal levels for healthy functioning of the systems involved.
Mm-hmm.
Plasmalogens fall into that category. The issue is that optimizing your health versus just survival those are two entirely different stories. And as we talk about, people aren't living longer. Like we still have, if you eat properly and exercise in your lifestyle, obviously do all those things. Okay. And there's many, many of us that are doing those things.
Or trying our best.
Right? But even if it's not you and I, other people are, right?
Totally.
Some people are. But they're still not living to 150, mm-hmm. 200. So clearly just a good diet and proper exercise isn't enough to create this perpetual health. And it makes logical sense because the human body is fairly complex. It involves a lot
mm-hmm.
of different things. Like even that small list of vitamins, that's a big long list.
Yeah.
And yes, your diet can supply most of those things most of the time. But there's certain molecules like this plasmalogen becomes like this essential nutrient. So there's some of these vitamins that your body just can't make, period,
mm-hmm.
right? Like we mentioned. And then there's other that are essential nutrients that your body can make, but typically requires additional support from the diet.
What is the difference between a vitamin and an essential nutrient? And also, choline is coming to mind.
Right.
There is this huge, I don't know if it was a discovery or maybe you could tell me about this, but I remember that there was a shift where all of a sudden we were talking about choline. We're talking about pregnant women should be taking choline, how important choline is for brain function and development.
Correct.
So is choline an essential nutrient?
Yeah. So choline took 50 some years for it to become recognized an essential nutrient. It became recognized in 1998 as an essential nutrient. So your body can make choline,
mm-hmm.
phosphatidylcholine for your membranes, but it's quite energetically demanding. So it does rely on levels in your diet, typically 500 or so milligrams per day of choline to supplement your body's ability to make choline.
That's a lot of choline.
There's a lot of choline. It's like 4 eggs, basically, roughly. You'd have to eat 4 eggs to get the recommended daily intake of choline.
Oh, wow.
And because if you don't take enough choline in your diet, you're forcing your body to make it. And so choline deficiencies result in fatty liver, cardiovascular disease, sclerosis, very serious outcomes of choline deficiencies. And so a classic scenario from a research perspective,
mm-hmm.
and people probably don't realize that all these vitamins and minerals and their essential nature to human health, these were all done in the 20s and 30s and early 40s. Like this was a long, long time ago that most vitamins were discovered.
Mm-hmm.
And how you normally do a research experiment like this is that either humans or animals, they get a diet deficient. So vitamin C, for example, like if you boil, certain products, vitamin C gets degraded. So you can actually induce a vitamin C deficiency, which creates scurvy-like symptoms.
Wasn't it like pirates that got scurvy because they were out at sea and they just weren't eating citrus fruits? It can't be that simple, but
Correct.
Something like that,
well,
right?
It is. Well, so the citric fruit,
mm-hmm.
So it was discovered back in the 1700s that there is something in citrus fruits and certain vegetables
mm-hmm.
that are absolutely required for human health. And this showed up for people that were in these long voyages on the ocean where they'd have insufficient food supply. They just have basic, bread, water, that kind of stuff, right? And they'd end up with all these symptoms. And then people realize that some people that had moderate symptoms, when they get to port and they start eating fruits and vegetables, they started getting better. So someone discovered, well, that's why the British soldiers are called limeys, for example, because they would ship limes with all the soldiers in the British Navy so that they would not get scurvy.
Wow.
So they knew that something in these citric fruits are necessary for human life. That was back in the 1700s. But the actual structure of vitamin C, ascorbic acid, was not discovered till the 30s. And so the way scientists typically discover whether something is essential or not, you first have to deprive that person of it. Deprive them of something. If you take this out of your diet, will you have negative consequences? And since most things are malnourishment, is actually part of your diet itself, it's easy to do that. Now, when you come to, so choline, for example, you feed animals a choline deficient diet and they automatically get a whole host of problems. Now, the problem with plasmalogens, so even though the body can make choline, so choline is an essential nutrient, they resisted calling it an essential nutrient for 50 some years because they said, well, people generally get enough in their diet here and there. So, what is the percent of people that are suffering severe health consequences, for choline? So even as we're talking right now, probably a lot of the viewers don't even realize that choline is an essential nutrient. And I would argue stuff like creatine and carnitine, these are also essential nutrients. But the point is, people are kind of this whole concept of, if you're not near death, you're okay, right? Which is not really viable. But all these things have been studied by taking these molecules away from the human body or animal studies and showing some problem. Now with plasmalogens, because there isn't a dietary source of plasmalogens, so I can't say, oh, I'm going to deprive your diet of plasmalogens and I'm going to see what happens, right? Well, because there's no dietary source, your body makes them all. So in order to study plasmalogen deficiencies, and we're talking about molecules that are in higher concentrations than cholines and other things in the body. Like these are not small amounts in the human body. These plasmalogens are in every single membrane.
Yeah, 30% of your brain lipids, 50% of your heart.
Huge amounts of, and so clearly your body makes a lot of them. So when we want to study plasmalogen deficiencies as an essential nutrient, we have to find ways under what circumstances can we see a plasmalogen deficiency occur? Well, the most obvious ones are genetic diseases, right? So there's certain genetic diseases. One that we studied, we talk a lot about, is rhizomelic chondrodysplasia punctata, RCDP, or people with leukodystrophies. There's a bunch of other peroxisomal diseases that result in these plasmalogen deficiencies. And it's really severe. Okay, so if your body doesn't make enough plasmalogens, you'll die within the first few months of life. Okay, very few of them make it to their teen years.
Kids are told they won't walk.
And they
don't even make it to their teens.
Their brain development is all disturbed, white matter deficiencies. They have dwarfism. They have neuromuscular issues. Most of them will die either heart failure or lung failure. And so the absolute requirement of plasmalogens for human health and vitality, that's absolutely known. So a plasmalogen deficiency, a genetic deficiency, is identical to vitamin C and scurvy. So then the question is, you can induce a plasmalogen deficiency using genetic mutations. And the question now is, can you restore them in those situations? And that's what the early research that I was doing back in the early 2000s, when discovered this plasmalogen deficiency linked to all these diseases. The first step is, well, okay, how do we restore plasmalogen levels? And you need to do the basic research. Can you restore function? Can you take something away, cause a problem, and if you restore it, can you restore health? And the genetic disease is one perfect example with RCTP, but there's other things that happen. So we can do studies we've talked about multiple sclerosis, and the demyelination occurs. And we have studies where you take a toxin like a cuprazone in your diet. And this is really important for people to realize. So you can induce a plasmalogen deficiency by being exposed to certain toxins in your environment. So cuprazone is a copper chelating molecule that we use in science to create multiple sclerosis. It causes demyelination. And what does it do? It depletes plasmalogens instantly. Within the first few days, animals start taking cuprazone, plasmalogen levels in their blood drop. And then a couple of weeks later, the plasmalogens in the brain start dropping. So by creating an excessive breakdown of plasmalogens, which oxidative stress will do, or any kind of, your body starts getting depleted because you put a plasmalogen demand on the body greater than that person's ability or that animal's ability to make enough naturally. So you can induce a plasmalogen deficiency.
When you say plasmalogen demand, it's really a large stressor, right?
Exactly.
Because plasmalogen is one of your body's weapons against stress and illness.
Absolutely.
And acute illness and chronic disease.
Yeah.
It's just one of your body's go-to, antioxidants. And so
this is why it's so dramatic.
Yeah.
Like in virtually every single disease of negative health consequences have a plasmalogen deficiency. This is all published research.
Mm-hmm.
COVID specifically depleted plasmalogens in individuals. Cardiovascular disease, low levels of plasmalogens.
Yeah.
Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, autism, dementia, aging in general. So the list goes on and on and on and on. If there is a chronic human disease, there's an extremely high likelihood that there's a plasmalogen deficiency associated with it.
And I'd like to take a couple steps back because you kind of stumbled upon this, right? Through looking at the biomarkers in blood. So tell us a little bit about your invention of the mass spec and kind of your journey, because plasmalogens have been cited in the literature over 100 years ago.
Yes.
But you kind of had your own journey to really realizing their importance.
Correct. So I'm formally trained in chemistry, biochemistry, synthetic organic chemistry. My PhD is in medicine on the neurochemistry, understanding the biochemical mechanisms of neurological diseases, looking at how the structure of the brain and the biochemistry of the brain. That's my training. I was never taught about plasmalogens, period. Okay, so when we're looking at, and so when I first got into this world from an academic perspective, and then in the pharmaceutical industry and biotech, looking for diagnostics, the premise was if you have a disease, for example, chances are that disease, if you have a tumor, that tumor is doing something to your body, right? And so therefore, I should be a person with a tumor. Mm-hmm. That tumor should be negatively affecting the biochemistry of that individual. So if I can measure the biochemistry of the body comprehensively enough, I should be able to detect people with cancer versus people without cancer. And so I invented this technology called non-targeted metabolic profiling. Uses Fourier transform, ion cyclotron resonance, mass spectrometry.
So basically you're taking blood work and you're just taking I don't want
thousands and thousands of molecules simultaneously that we could identify afterwards. And we applied this technology to human diseases. We want to say, okay, let me look at people with colon cancer and not, ovarian cancer, breast cancer, lung cancer, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's, all these various diseases we looked at. And the goal was to look in the blood to find out, is there biochemical signatures of that disease? So my whole mindset was find the disease. The disease is causing biochemical change. And I invented a technology to detect those biochemical changes. And the real eye-opener was a study we did with colon cancer. And so when we use this technology in colon cancer and Alzheimer's disease, we can identify molecules that are different between the populations. So plasmalogens is one of these molecules that decrease dramatically in the blood in people with cancer, dementia, and some other molecules, right? And so then we say, okay, that's great. We found this in colon cancer, working with a university in Japan, Osaka University. And we said, okay, let's look at people before and after the surgical removal of the cancer. Because the mindset was that the cancer is physically eating away these plasmalogens or eating away these biomarkers in the blood. What the premise was, well, if I take the tumor away and there's no tumor left in this person, then those biomarkers should come back to normal because the tumor is no longer there, causing these biochemical changes. And what we found was a large amount of molecules didn't come back to normal. Okay, so some did. So there are truly biomarkers of the cancer for sure in the blood, but there's a whole bunch of other biomarkers that didn't change. So we removed the tumor. The person was given a clean bill of health, analyzed their blood, and there's a certain class of molecules that were still deficient or low. We really didn't understand what this meant. So we redid the entire study with another collaborator in Chiba University, a different part of Japan, got exactly the same results. And that's when this whole prodrome concept really was born, understanding, whoa, these molecules these biochemical changes are occurring before these diseases take place. These are prodromes of the disease, not after. They're not occurring after the disease. They're occurring before the disease. And plasmalogens were one of those big categories.
Prodrome literally means that which comes before. So prodromes are patterns. They're the biochemical writing on the wall that when these things are low or high or whatever that may be, but when you see this certain pattern, it is a precursor to potentially, whether it's a disease or disorder, but these are just signs that things are going in that direction.
And other people had seen in the 80s and early 90s, even post-mortem brain samples, plasmalogens were discovered in the 20s. And obviously the role, or 1919, I think it was, and the role in these leukodystrophies and RCTB, that was all figured out in the 70s. And so the importance of plasmalogens were well known. But when it came to aging and chronic diseases of humans, it was just assumed, because these molecules are such potent antioxidants, they neutralize your hydrogen peroxides, they neutralize your free radicals. It was just assumed that the oxidative stress of these diseases were causing the depletion in plasmalogens, which clearly is contributing to it. And so they didn't really think of plasmalogens as causal to the disease process. It made obvious, it felt obvious or looked obvious that because these are such powerful antioxidants and this vinyl ether bond that they have is sensitive, that the depletion is being caused by the disease, not preceding the disease. And so the longitudinal studies that we did with these advanced mass spectrometry proved that to be wrong. And especially in Alzheimer's, like the level or dementia, the level of plasmalogens decreased with the severity of the dementia, and it was predictive of dementia in the future. We could predict future dementia rates. And so that became understanding more, what are these molecules doing in the essential matrix of human life and physiology? Because they are in everything. They're in every one of your cells, your body. Wow. But clearly, we don't get all diseases at once. So some people get cardiovascular disease. Some people get Parkinson's. Some people will get dementia. Some people will get cancer. And the question now becomes, why do we have such a large, diverse portfolio of adverse health consequences linked to these plasmalogen deficiencies? And it comes down to the canary in the coal mine concept, right? What is your weak link? That's whatever your weakest link will be will affect that. And then certain toxins in our environment preferentially affect different cell types. So for example, COVID preferentially affects the heart. So this myocarditis that's been associated with. So even though the COVID infection, everyone recognizes is bad for you, right? You never say, well, that's a good thing for you. It's obviously demanding on the human body, but it's not equally demanding on all parts of the human body. So it's going to have some areas of the human body that's going to be more affected by COVID than others. Or we take Parkinson's, people see symptoms of Parkinson's, which is, movement disorders. Well, there's parts of your brain that are required for movement. And this is a dopaminergic system. So if you get a selective plasmalogen or a preponderance of plasmalogen deficiencies in that dopamine system, you're going to end up with Parkinsonian symptoms. If you get a preponderance of a plasmalogen deficiency in your cholinergic system, you're going to get dementia, and so on and so forth. So the plasmalogens, they're in every part of your body, or the myelination or the protective coating. If you get, so people with multiple sclerosis, they'll get acute inflammation of the brain. That inflammation is targeted to their white matter. And so even though plasmalogens are present in all these systems, and your body has a natural ability to make them, but it's really this reservoir concept. And it's kind of funny. Well, not funny. It's really tragic, actually, if you think about the fires in LA recently, right? The issue really is a reservoir. If there's nothing in your reservoir, you can't fight a fire.
Yeah.
Right? And so plasmalogens are like that, reservoir. And normally the reservoirs have a certain feed rate. Like your body makes certain plasmalogens, are making it all the time, right? And your body makes these plasmalogens, just like the rains make water, and they fill your reservoirs up. And the goal is to have a reservoir that's full, so that when you have a fire, in LA, it was in the Palisades or wherever it occurred, in the human body, it could be the heart, it could be the lungs, it could be the brain. And your body draws from that reservoir, hopefully to put the fire out. And then after the fire is gone, then the reservoir gradually builds back up its reservoir. But if you don't have enough in the reservoir, you can't fight the fire to begin with. Or if the fire goes on for too long,
Yeah, exactly.
okay, you end up getting depleted. And then all you're left with is that small little trickle that your body can make, which is why, the planes come in and they scoop the water out of the ocean and they basically supplement the reservoir.
Yeah.
Right? You're bringing in an external source to help fight the fire.
When the fires were happening, so I live in Santa Monica.
Yeah.
I remember the most gratifying thing I saw on social media in such a crazy time was those planes. Like, you would just send it to your friends. You would watch it over and over again because it just felt like you could see the plane going over the fire and just dropping the water over it. And I'm kind of having that aha moment of, yes, your body has its own water. Yes, the earth has its own water and rain and lakes and all these different things. But, supplementing with plasmalogen is literally like that plane just dousing the fire, right? Taking something that your body innately makes and has and throwing some more on it to kind of help your body out. And I think I'm processing everything you're saying because it's such a fascinating story where you didn't find Plasmalogen's really found you, right? You were looking at patterns of disease and disorder, and you saw this pattern of where, you see some sort of deviation from health and there's plasmalogens.
Correct.
There's a deficiency there. So supplementing with plasmalogen is kind of like giving your body more of its own support.
Correct.
So that that's why it's so universal, right?
Correct.
Because it can use that to fight whatever it needs to fight.
Correct.
And talking about, all the different things it does from signaling to membrane fluidity, it's everywhere in every cell. And you have two different plasmalogen precursors. You have the prodrome neuro, which is more the synaptic signaling, the cell communication, right?
Yeah, plasmalogens are like a Swiss Army knife.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, they have it's you can say here's one knife, but it has a multiple set of tools to it, and based upon what type of plasmalogen you pull out of your Swiss Army knife, it's used for different purposes. Yeah. And so in the human body, we have these two basic groups. Okay, there's more than two, but there's two real basic groups. One is the omega-9, which is oleic acid. And it creates this myelin sheath. So when membranes, membranes are these phospholipid bilayers. And a phospholipid is a molecule that has one polar head group and a long fatty
Phospholipid's a fat, right?
Yes.
And the membranes are the structure, like the outside of your cell. Like if you were drawing a cell,
correct,
what you would draw, the box on the outside, that's kind of like the membrane.
Right, but the phospholipids are kind of like soap.
Okay.
They are emulsifiers. They exist in water and in oil.
Okay.
They work on that interface. And how they work is that they have one part of the molecule is polar or water-like, hydrophilic, so liking water, and one part of the molecule, which is this long fatty acid chain, which is hydrophobic or lipophilic, likes the lipid side. And what they do is when they combine, they create this phospholipid bilayer. Like the fatty acid chains combine together to create this impervious wall with the polar head groups on the outside. So that's how the body creates these walls. So phospholipids, these fatty acid side chains, they stack together. And the way they stack together creates a diversity in your membranes. So just like if you go to your hardware store and if you take a look at the stacks of plywood, so you get these 20 pieces of plywood, they stack on top of each other and they get really, really tightly packed. Like, if you ever try to pull one piece of plywood off of a whole stack, it's like stuck, right? Because it seals tightly. Versus a stack of chain link fence, like they're just all loosely. And so omega-9 plasmalogens are like that plywood. They create this really tight packing, this really tight impervious packing. And your body uses these omega-9 plasmalogens to create impervious walls, which is the electrical coating on your axon. So all the wiring of the body, these axons are your copper wires through your body, and your body creates a plastic coating around them. Of course, your body's alive, so it's not plastic and copper. These are living cells, but the plastic coating is called myelin. And the omega-9 plasmalogens create this really tight, impervious, protective coating on that axon, which allows a signal to move from point A to point B very, very quickly.
I feel like with prodrome glia, the omega-9 plasmalogen, I think of it in the context of, neurodevelopment, right? Like you're born and your brain is a bunch of raw wires. These wires have yet to be coded.
Correct.
And the prodrome glia, the omega-9, provides the raw materials for that coding. That's basically what you're saying. And so the prodrome glia is great for anything to do with demyelination.
Correct.
So that applies to MS, where there are, this sclerosis of the white matter in the brain, the scarring.
Mm-hmm.
But even for autism, because the myelin of the brain, autism is an inflammation in the brain, right? Yes. And so providing it with that raw material for myelin is really important if you have an inflamed brain so that it can myelinate.
See, autism is a really great example of this concept of an essential nutrient and this ability to supplement the natural development of the human body. Okay, so when we're born with very little myelin. So we're actually born plasmalogen deficient. And then the body so as a child starts learning things and connects dots and their motor dexterity gets better and better. Okay, all those neurons, as they connect to things, they start myelinating. So your body needs this power to myelinate, and it's a critical function. And if that child gets exposed to certain stressors, so certain inflammatory stressors that put a stress and a load on that child during the development, it slows down that learning process. And it causes the body to kind of create alternative ways of getting to, it's going to try to solve the problem. And so autism is this neurodevelopmental challenge, if you will. Okay, something is stressing them. And so plasmalogens are one of the key components of this white matter development, which is one of the most reproducible observations in children and adults with autism, is this white matter myelination process is disrupted. And so plasmalogen precursors are really powerful in those situations because you can restart the neurodevelopmental process and you can actually catch up. Children can actually, and adults can start catching up to their peers because you're just adding the raw material. Like you're not changing anything in that child. Like you're just supporting that child's natural developmental pathway that they're just having a hard time.
Because they have more to overcome because there's inflammation in their brain. So it's really just that helicopter flying over and helping them out.
Exactly. And it's a step up. It's exactly that. And the omega-9 plasmalogen is really structure, like it's in your heart, like anything where it's a really core building block plasmalogen. And so that's where the omega-9, the prodrome glia comes in, because it's really that if there was the most emergency kit plasmalogen is the glia. Mm-hmm. And then the other version that we have is the omega-3, which has DHA, which many people understand is important for you, like getting good DHA in your diet. But that is the chain link fence type plasmalogen. Okay, that doesn't create these really tight packing like the omega-9 does. The omega-3 is dynamic. It allows cells it's involved in where your membranes need to be open, and the membranes need things going in and out, and membranes need flexibility. So all of the doors and the windows and,
I love that.
That process is all the omega-3s.
And it's the communication, right?
All the communication.
Signaling between neurons.
Well, that's a really critical thing because, obviously I'm a neuroscientist, so everything's brain related to me, right? But the synapse, how the connectivity of the human body, how one neuron connects to another, or how your neuron connects to your muscle to get your muscle to move. All these synapses, the human body connects the light switches using neurotransmitter release. And these are vesicles, like these little balls, phospholipid balls, if you will, that contain millions and millions of neurotransmitters. They need to fuse to the membrane to release their neurotransmitter, and that goes across the synaptic cleft to the next neuron to signal the next process. That requires very, very dynamic membranes. The membranes are opening and closing. And that process is incredibly dependent on plasmalogens, but not any type of plasmalogen. These polyunsaturated plasmalogens, specifically DHA. So that's a membrane fusion. So that turns on, that creates, that's where the cognition and the improved neuromuscular, improved motor skills are all involved, because you're enhancing the natural activity or you're restoring that natural, you're either restoring natural activity or you're enhancing your existing activity. And that's on the synaptic side, but also cholesterol transport. When when your body, when your cells are trying to regulate how much cholesterol, it's like a temperature gauge, right? When it gets too hot, the air conditioning has to come on. When it gets too cold, the heater has to come on. And so the body regulates all these things. And this regulation process is a very dynamic membrane mechanism. And so cholesterol transport, enzyme function in the cell membranes, all these things are affected. And so when plasmalogens get depleted, or you have a deficiency of plasmalogens, then the membranes get stiff. They get less flexible. All these things are harder to work.
And when we did we met during the clinical trial where we studied prodrome neuro in patients with cognitive impairment, but I think 44% reversed a scale on the clinical dementia rating. So they went from mild to moderate, or moderate to mild, or mild to no, which is amazing. No cognitive impairment. And that was like 44%, but almost everyone improved in their mobility. Correct. So it all comes back to this, cellular signaling where you're actually, whether the brain is communicating with a muscle, or communicating with another brain cell, the plasmalogen, the prodrome neuro really helps with that synaptic communication.
Yeah, and we're just restoring function. We're basically taking a raisin and putting it back into a grape. Basically, when your cells lose plasmalogen, they shrink.
Yeah.
Okay, they shrink and get shriveled, and they become less functional. And so when we provide the plasmalogen supplementation, you're just adding, you're allowing these cells to refresh themselves and reactivate their natural mechanisms.
Yeah. And one of the analogies we spoke about in some of our previous podcasts, which really helped me with the prodrome neuro versus the prodrome glia, is the glia, which is the white matter, the myelination toolkit, is more like a tuning fork where you hear a lot of noise, and adding glia helps you to kind of, silence the noise and clarify, a signal. Whereas the neuro is more like the volume.
Correct.
Right? So if it can improve cellular communication and kind of turn the volume up. That's
exactly right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you want, we use the analogy of an old radio, right? Where you have these two dials. One's the tuning dial, one's the volume dial. And the problem with autoimmune diseases, MS, autism, and others, is that if you turn if the channel is not tuned to the station properly, then you have all this noise. And if you turn the volume up, all you hear is noise.
Yeah.
But if you turn the volume down, okay, you can kind of hear the music behind the noise. And this is why people with these diseases, they need quiet environments. They need everything calm. But once you're tuned, okay, once the station is in tune, then you can crank up the volume. Okay, and that's where neuro. So the glia tunes the signal so that you actually have a clean, clear neurological signal, and then neuro turns it up, and that's kind of where they're used in combination with each other, virtually always. Like we always recommend, basically take glia at night to help restore your membranes overnight, and take neuro in the morning to wake you up and give you high functioning during the day.
And also why you have, you have a network of over 2,000 doctors, but you have a smaller group of elite practitioners who are trained to kind of navigate the nuances of what someone might be experiencing, and the proper sort of protocol and use of this nutrient. And I'm kind of in awe of how you discovered this deficiency and also created, a solution. And it's coming back to, we spoke about choline, we spoke about vitamins.
Yeah.
Choline is something your body makes itself. Vitamins are something you get from your food.
Right.
But the difference between, a choline deficiency and a plasmalogen deficiency is, before your work creating these precursors, if someone has a choline deficiency and they eat 4 or 5 eggs, they get their daily amount of choline. There was nothing anyone could do about a plasmalogen deficiency until you made these precursors, right? Right.
That's what's so shocking. I thought I invented these precursors in 2006, almost 20 years ago now.
Really?
Yeah. And it was like, well, how, because we need to do these research studies. And I'm thinking, how is it possible we don't have bioavailable precursors for these plasmalogens? They're absolutely critical. Like these old molecules people tried, like hymel and beta alcohol, they never worked. They never we're able to restore plasmalogens fully in individuals. And so I had to go into the biochemistry. This is where kind of serendipitously I had kind of the right skill set in different areas of medicinal chemistry and biochemistry. And so looking at the natural biochemical mechanisms of how the body makes it, there's an intermediate molecule called an alkyl acylglycerol. And so I published, if you make that molecule, you can selectively make any plasmalogen you want. If I give you an omega-9 precursor, it makes an omega-9 plasmalogen. If I give you a DHA precursor, it makes a DHA plasmalogen. So I can now basically, in pure biochemical engineering, we can deliver molecules, the exact type of plasmalogen to the exact type of body cell that you need.
So why can't someone get it in their diet?
Well, the problem is, so you have all these, that's a really good question, because you think, well, all this in your brain, all in your heart. So obviously, if I'm eating animal products, I should be making plasmalogens. Well, the problem is that what makes plasmalogens special is at the very last step in their manufacture in your body, what makes them such a powerful antioxidant also makes them extremely sensitive to acid. So the little fuse that makes plasmalogens active is this little bond called a vinyl ether bond, which makes it exquisitely sensitive to acid, specifically hydrogen peroxide. So when you eat a fully formed plasmalogen, when it hits the stomach acids in your stomach, it gets burst apart. So it can't make it into the food, into your circulatory system.
So they're made in the peroxisomes of your liver, right? So that means they're not.
But they're made in all your cells. Every single cell of your body makes plasmalogens. Okay, so
wow.
Yeah, they're made everywhere in your body. So the liver does make a big bulk that goes into your blood supply, but every single cell. And this is a critical component of why the precursors are important. So if you have demyelination in multiple sclerosis, the liver can't make enough for it to deliver. Like, you actually need to get the plasmalogen precursors into the brain, into those oligodendrocytes, and those oligodendrocytes make their plasmalogens. So you have to get the plasmalogens the precursors need to go to the cell that needs them. And from that perspective, it repopulates in situ, at the location it's needed. And that's why these plasmalogen precursors are so powerful, because it's not about the plasmalogens in your blood. These precursors actually go to the cell that needs them, and that cell then uses that precursor to replenish it.
Wow. So we talk a lot about these choline deficiencies, and people kind of understand now how important choline is for function. Plasmalogen seems like as important, if not more, but the caveat is you can't even though your body makes it itself, you can't really get it from your diet, which is why maybe I'm thinking that even though it was cited over 100 years ago, people weren't talking about it because it was kind of like, well, life sucks and then you die. Like, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah. Well, and then there's some challenging science about that. So first of all, is actually having, like you said, a precursor that can do the restoration, and then also being able to identify areas of known plasmalogen deficiencies, because there's association. So our trial in dementia was a good example, right? Obviously, we ran the trial not even to look for that. We ran the trial
just to see if you could increase plasmalogen levels, right?
It was just a safety intolerance study, right? And we just chose people with dementia because they're most likely to have plasmalogen deficiencies, okay, statistically. And so that was that. So when you want to look at this classic analysis where you create a deficiency and then you restore it, well, when you're 40, 50, 20s, like, you're not a child with RCDP. Like, you don't have a genetic mutation. And so we're not going to go around forcing someone to take some sort of toxin. Like that, you can't do that for humans. So what we can do, this is where the advanced MRI technology really comes in, because there's certain things in human physiology and aging that are very well documented. Like, the aging human brain is extremely well documented in terms of white matter loss, gray matter loss, shrinkage of the brain. And since the brain contains a lot of these plasmalogens, the premise then is, well, is this age-associated reduction in ability to make sufficient plasmalogens for brain health, is that one of the main causations of the reduced brain health with age, reducing the volume of the brain, reducing the gray matter of the brain? And so now with advanced MRI technology, we can actually study that, because we can use the natural epidemiology of humans to restore them. And so now we've been doing with this advanced MRI with these plasmalogen precursors, can we reverse the aging of the human brain? And the reality is that we have longitudinal MRI in a small number of individuals, but the data is very robust, that we can actually start turning back that clock of aging. And we can actually start, if we restore these plasmalogens and restore these plasmalogen reservoirs, the brain actually regrows itself.
Which you showed with your own brain.
Yes.
Right? So you've done, advanced neuroimaging where you have actually used volumetrics to show an increase in the volume of your brain size.
Yes.
And we've seen stories of Lisa Grillo with MS where she was able to regrow her optic nerve, right?
Yeah, well, reconnect. Yeah, so
okay.
basically, she was blind for 30 years, okay, in her right eye. And then after about a year on the plasmalogens, she could see. Like she started reading lines on the eye chart. And then on the MRI, we could actually track the connectivity. The brain was reconnecting her right eye to her left occipital cortex and so on and so forth.
And other, MS patient who had, the sclerosis, the scarring on the white matter had, an MRI and it's gone.
Yeah,
so this is remarkable.
We see that in stroke. We see that in, concussion, traumatic brain injury situations.
Because you yourself had a concussion, right? As a kid.
Yeah, and then so the MRI basically, showed 45 years after the fact, okay, that I still had a post-concussive syndrome of having a really bad fall on my head when I was young. And that really had an effect, brain inflammation. So I was lucky because I thought I was fine, but when I did the MRI, I wasn't. and then we were able to restore that structure and function.
What's so moving about what you just said is look at everything you have accomplished with that, concussion that you had as a kid that was impairing your brain function. Look what you've been able to do with that. And now that you've been able to, restore brain volume and kind of heal that, you're going to be functioning even better and able to do even more wonderful things. And that's what this is all about, right? For people listening, just imagine what you could do at optimal function when you were feeling even better than you are today.
Well, my vision's back to when I was 17 and stuff like that. A lot of things happened, but it was actually really what it really exposed was a ticking time bomb, because your body does adapt. Okay, we have things where stress is good. We can't live without stress. Okay, stress is what makes us stronger, and certainly if it's a manageable stress level. And so a lot of people with autism are super high achievers, or even like a mild type, or just a mild level of inflammation can actually cause enhanced function. Okay, so if that inflammation is, and you're able to control it, you can get enhanced function, but you will burn out eventually. And this is what happens sometimes. And so for me, the little bit of inflammation was probably creating additional brain activity, okay, but it was putting a lot of stress on my brain. My brain was running at the RPMs were too high, and that's great when you're young and you think you can handle it, but it eventually catches up to you. And so, you could see in my brain that it was going to start catching up to me. So I was able to prevent that future situation where, basically you burn out. And so an ability to maintain the functional capacity, and then also resolve that inflammation in my brain was dramatic. So these are things that we now have the ability to measure things. We have the ability to actually intervene logically. Okay, we're not just randomly throwing things at a situation in a very strategic, structured, metabolic bioengineering, if you will. And this is where the complexity at the early part of our conversation say, people are doing all these things, right? They're I'm a consumer, so I see all these ads, I see all these supplements, I see, okay, what should I be taking? What shouldn't I be taking? There's a big long list, right? And the list is long. There is actually a lot of good things that we need to be taking to supplement our diet, so that because our food supply just doesn't have enough of everything we need. It's not physically possible just by eating food alone to get all the nutrients. You have enough to get you through the first 30, 40, 50, 60 years of your life, okay? But not enough to sustain really high degrees of functionality long term. And so I think that's where we're really at a whole new level of science where we have the ability to measure, not just looking, oh, am I vitamin B12 deficient? It's not about screening for deficiencies. It's about understanding the prodrome of advanced health. Okay, what is the reservoir? What is the function that will lead to sustained high levels of function indefinitely?
Mm-hmm.
And we have a lot of tools, and new tools are being developed. But this plasmalogen story as an essential nutrient it's really hard to really fathom the seriousness of this. Probably the most eye-opening or even disturbing study I did was with Rush University in Chicago. It's a longitudinal study in aging. And we did this study to look at individuals and the rate of progression of dementia, okay? Their cognitive function over time, because we'd have blood samples on multiple times, over 17 years of individuals, right? And highly accurate cognitive status. And the whole concept we were doing with this collaboration was understanding the role of plasmalogens and other molecules, see which ones correlated, with the progression of dementia or the initiation of dementia. And we showed very clearly that your plasmalogen levels correlated with dementia. So if you had low plasmalogens, you're more likely to have dementia. It also said if you had no dementia today and you had low plasmalogens, you had a higher probability of becoming demented in the next 3 years than someone who had normal plasmalogen. So it was predicting future dementia. But then we're doing all this work and we said, well, this is an elderly population, right? We're in their 80s. Clearly, they're not living forever. And this study's been going on a long time. So some of these individuals are dying, right? Natural deaths. Can we ask the question, well, why don't we look at the predictability, not just for reduced cognition, but the predictability of who's actually dying? What's the mortality risk? And it turned out the association with plasmalogens and all-cause mortality was above and beyond the cognitive status. Okay, we're dealing with like a 30-year difference in lifespan. And so we look at 5-year survivability.
30-year difference.
30 years. Yeah, so a 65-year-old with low plasmalogens had the same 5-year survivability as a 95-year-old with high plasmalogens. So a 95-year-old with high plasmalogens had the same probability of living in the next 5 years to their 100th birthday as a 65-year-old with low plasmalogens. 30-year difference in lifespan and it's all-cause mortality. And that's after even correcting for the increased mortality risk associated with dementia. It was just mind-boggling, which leads us, which makes sense now, right? Because it's not just about the cholinergic system that drives our cognitive function in the brain. Okay, it is about our heart.
It's in every cell.
It's about our lungs. Okay, and every single cancer that I've ever studied, the cancer has low plasmalogens. Okay, and interesting, when we did a longitudinal study in breast cancer in Japan, for example, there's molecules like this elongation rate, but plasmalogens were also a critical diagnostic indicator of breast cancer. More importantly, when we did post-recovery, so breast cancer is one of the cancers that have a pretty good success rate for treatment, okay, for most women. And so we could track women after they've gone through the proper chemo, radiation, proper protocols, and they were given a proper bill of health. Well, the biomarkers that were associated with the cancer itself, like these elongation markers that we had, those returned to normal after the breast cancer was treated. But the plasmalogens were the same, if not even lower.
Burnt out.
Showing that not the plasmalogens did not return to normal. In fact, the chemotherapy was actually lowering these plasmalogens even more. And so this is also why people with cancer have a higher risk of cancer recurrence than someone who never had cancer before. And so these concepts of prodromes, we're starting to understand this basic human physiology of, there is, a manufacturing specifications of operating. The human body is designed to work. And our job is to put it into those working parameters. It's not about playing God. We just have to actually provide the nutrients and understand what the human body needs and understand what the healthy levels are, what healthy function is. And if we can maintain that, the body will heal itself.
It's miraculous. And the Swiss Army knife of plasmalogens. I understand, if someone listening feels like it's, snake oil or too good to be true, how does it help all these things? And, what I would say to that is, one, I personally have seen so many people, I wouldn't say a magical cure, but I would say defy a diagnosis or get better. Parents have come up to us at conferences, telling us how much this has changed their family's life because it's impacted their children. We have stories of people, MS, dementia, Parkinson's, you name it. And people are getting better. And they're people who are going through different things. And so, those stories to me speak volumes of their potential. And it also shows that, we're not talking about some sort of, engineered cure. No. It's really supporting your body's own biochemistry. Right. And plasmalogens aren't, the cause. They are your body's support system. The thing that's overcoming is your own biochemistry. Your own body is fighting the disease or the disorder or the inflammation, right? Yeah. It's the plasmalogens which are helping your body to do what it wants to do, which is function well.
Correct. So when you have a plasmalogen deficiency, it's a measure of your body's being under health. So plasmalogens themselves, they're not a cure for anything. They're not even a treatment for anything, okay? What they do is they restore your health. Your health.
Exactly.
Your health is a treatment for dementia. Your health is
That's
the
what
treatment.
I was trying to get to, and you nailed it.
Health is the cure. Okay, there's no one supplement. Okay, all the supplements that you use, the purpose of those supplements is to restore your health, not treat a disease. When your health is restored, it is your health that treats a disease. It is your health that actually cures and prevents a future thing. Health is the prevention. Health is, and so we're programmed to think of disease, and it comes from this infectious concept, right? Where you get a bacterial infection or viral infection, that some external force has been inserted into you, and you need to get rid of it. And so that is this protagonistic or antagonistic approach where we say, find the tumor, kill the tumor. Right? You're trying to get
and
this
you
thing.
Came from there too.
I did, absolutely.
You didn't choose this philosophy. This philosophy just showed up using in the research. Right? Like you started from trying to eliminate disease, and you realized that didn't work as well as supporting health.
Correct. And so it's the loss of health that causes disease. Okay, it's not disease that takes your health away. You lose your health and then you get disease. And so the cure for disease is the restoring of health. So health restoration is the treatment. Health restoration is the cure. And it's not specific to any one disease, because when your health is restored, okay, your body can fight the various different circumstances that come your way. And I think this kind of concept of, rather than treating disease, just restore health and let your health actually take care of that situation.
And plasmalogens are a critical milestone, right? They're not the be all end all, but they are what is possible through this health restoration lens, right? Like we've been discovering vitamins and nutrients and deficiencies for hundreds of years. This is a major milestone and breakthrough that will help people to live longer and better. But there will be more.
Yes. And it's an add-on perspective, okay? Like as you fix one thing and you notch up your health and functionality, okay? Now you're at the next mountaintop, that you can actually see the next mountaintop. Okay, we can't even see the next step until we get up to this step. And so plasmalogens in combination with other health nutrition, okay, that gets you to a higher level of higher function. And at that level now you can look for the next peak to climb, okay, in human health optimization and longevity. And that's this whole process of identifying these priorities. And the plasmalogens, other nutritions there's a whole many that we already know about. These are core priorities to get done first. And once we get these done, it's going to open up other areas where we say, okay, now that we've solved this problem, okay, now we can actually add either further enhancements.
What else does the body need to thrive? What else could we give the body that would help it to?
Correct. And we can measure this now. We've got the technology. We can actually do real science on this thing. So it's a real brand new world of proactive, in control of your health. This whole self-directed research that we advocate, where people can actually look and track themselves and optimize and be objective about what we're trying to achieve versus just kind of randomly doing whatever the next fad tells you should do.
So when you had said, the choline deficiency was discovered when, in the 50s or something like that? 50s?
Right.
Where there was some documented literature about
huge.
that?
Like it was studied in the 40s and 50s. And so the negative consequences, the cardiovascular consequences, fatty liver consequences of a choline deficiency, all extremely well documented in the 50s.
But you said it wasn't, a core nutrient
until 1998.
Yeah. So when can we hope that plasmalogen is a core nutrient?
I think it's our job now is to run these community trials and continue to do our research, continue to do the advanced MRI, showing that we can restore health, and when we restore health, we restore function. And at some point in the relatively near future, it will be a molecule. It'll be something that it'll be mandated, especially in infant formulas and stuff like that. Like these are things that are really infant formulas, maternal health, early childhood development, especially for our, getting kids on a good start in life. Concussions, like all the kids that are playing contact sports and trying to head protection is a critical thing, and we're going to do a talk on that. One of these,
I think next month. Yeah,
next month in Health Matters. But protecting the brain, I think plasmalogens are going to be a core. I think it's going to also drive other core nutrient that people just take for granted they don't do. And so it's going to be a major driving force in restoring and getting optimized health for everybody.
And it's in every cell of your body. Yeah. So it's kind of
important.
Undeniable that there's some sort of importance there as we've seen. Well, I hope that it's sooner rather than later where everyone's talking about plasmalogens.
Well, I'm not waiting.
We're not waiting. We're on this mission.
Yeah, we're on.
Yeah, I mean, I have seen and talked to too many families where this has just radically changed their life. So to me, it's undeniable. And I can't wait to spread this message, and I can't wait for the next milestone. Let's keep going. Let's keep discovering more things.
It's pretty exciting.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Goodnow.
Thank you, Victoria.